change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
What exists, reality itself, is gorgeous. It is the plenum, the fullness of total joy. The universe is a celebration. It's a fireworks show to celebrate that existence is. Wowee.
For those of us seeking a life of meaning and purpose, capturing fulfillment in every moment of now, seeking the truths of our reality so we can live this life to its fullest. This is the Live This Life podcast. I am your host, Heath Cummings.
And I'm your co-host for the day, Alexis McQuillan. We're here to inspire you to ask yourself the question every single day. Are you living or are you killing time?
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode. And we finally have the long-lost Alexis McQuillan joining us, as well as her friend, Jami Clark, who is joining her. Jami is going to be joining Alexis on an upcoming podcast that they are about to release onto this world. Jami is a birth doula and a mom and a wife, and she's going to be Alexis's co-host on the I'm Bored What's Next podcast. So it's going to be coming out later this year, and basically it's them transporting boredom into witty banter and sharing unique perspectives and diving into any and all topics that pique their interest, from spirituality to pop culture. So kind of a little bit different of a version of what we've kind of done here, but from Jami and Alexis's perspective. So what's going on, ladies?
Honestly, it's going to be like a dumb version.
Yeah.
He's like, Heath, you're so smart.
I'll stop by once in a while. No, I'm sure you guys are going to do a great job. My God.
You're like, I'm
Give
smarter
yourself
than
some
you
credit.
guys. We're like, but we're funny.
Alexis is the comic relief, and kind of balances out my dryness every once in a while, I guess.
No, you're funny. You're, but he's going to come on our podcast and be like blowing our minds with quantum physics. And
yeah.
we're going to be like, what?
I'm just going to come on your podcast and act completely goofy. I'm just not going to do anything that's similar to what I've done before. But yeah, what are we chatting about today, Alex? Actually, first, before we get into that, what have you been up to? Because not only have I not seen you on the podcast, I actually haven't even really talked to you much lately. So what's been happening?
Well, as you can hear, I have a cough and you have the sniffles. So we've both been really sick.
Yeah.
So I've been dealing with that. But you know what? I actually have dove into a new project. I actually have a new job. It's a startup company that I'm building from the ground up with my friend, which is super exciting. And then I'm doing this podcast, I'm Bored What's Next with Jami, and I'm really, really excited. I just can't wait. I can't wait to play your intro. It's so funny and hopefully people enjoy it, but it is like two stupid girls just talking about all things random.
Stupid smart girls.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Smart girls that like to have fun and not take themselves too seriously.
Yeah.
Not stupid. There's nothing stupid about the podcast. Alexis.
Now I'm being the cynical one.
There you go.
But yeah, I think those are the biggest things going on in my life. What about you?
Just a lot of stuff's been moving and shaking. So it's been hard to, get things consistent, but I'm kind of wrapping up this current season of the podcast, and we're going to be starting season 5. Yeah. Season 5. We're going to start it on the spring equinox. I think it's a good date because we started this whole podcast on the fall equinox. So we're going to kind of jump the seasons forward a little bit, but this upcoming year is going to be really cool. We've got a lot of awesome guests coming up, and hopefully we'll see Alexis a little more often, even though she's going to be busy doing her many things. But
can I tell you real quick? You said spring equinox, and it just reminded me. So Jami and I met at a CrossFit gym, and we were like, oh, I love you. I think we're going to be really good friends, right out the gate. And I don't know why we were talking about it, but we're like, man, I just want to create a feminine group and just get witchy and get playful and bring out our inner child. And so we somehow manifested this amazing group of women. And so every month since last September? October, we've been getting together monthly at different people's houses. And the last one, the one before the last, what we did I tell you about this?
No.
Oh my gosh. I feel like we should release a clip of this, but Jami and I, we were watching this movie and they basically are like these four sisters and they're upstairs in the attic and they're doing a play, like just acting funny and just like children. And we were like, we should get our friends to do that. That's a great idea. And so we built out this entire script. We went to a cabin. Jami bought the pirate costumes and we made these girls. We got them so drunk and we were like, act for us. So that's what I've been up to.
Okay.
The reason you said that is because we started it on fall equinox.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was wondering where the relevance was going to the spring equinox.
The relevance is we started that on fall equinox and we wanted to have it like seasonal.
Thanks for bringing that back
No
in.
problem. Brilliant.
Are you guys going to check out the eclipse? Because you're kind of near where it's going to be passing by. Like it's starting from the southwest and heading up here.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You probably don't know
I knew
anything
that was a
about it,
thing.
do you?
We didn't know
You
that.
paid attention.
April 8th. Like we're actually heading up
Oh.
toward like the Canadian border, so we could see it from where we live, but we want to go and be underneath the path of it. But we also don't want to go like spend buku bucks on a hotel in case the sun doesn't come out like it hasn't been coming out around here at all ever. So it would kind of suck to
He's
go
in
and
Massachusetts.
rent a place for a couple $100 a night and then have it be cloudy on the day of the big solar eclipse.
That would be terrible.
It's gonna be cool though.
So April 8th?
Yeah, it's like Monday, and I think it's gonna peak in this area like 2:00, but it comes from your guys' area, like it crisscrosses the United States, because the 2017 one went from like the northwest down to like North Carolina, and this other one's starting from like your area in the southwest and coming up to the northeast. So
Be sweet.
it's gonna be cool.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Have you ever seen an eclipse?
I just the one that happened. I mean, if there was one like when I was in like 8th grade, it got a little bit dark around here. And then the one that was in 2017, like you could see it. It didn't get like pitch black though. Like that one was so cool. Like just the one that happened in 2017 of just seeing like the sun get partially blocked out. I was just like so amazed by it. So I'm like, the next one that comes out in 7 years, I want to be like there when it gets black. I want the big goofy glasses. Like I want to do the whole thing. So
You're saying you've had a calendar countdown since
I
then?
have this
Okay, cool.
huge 365-day calendar right in front of me, and I have the eclipse drawn on April 8th. Like I am
Nice.
I love it.
Yeah, no, but it was like a very spiritual experience. So like I remember that was like the rough year that I was going through a whole lot of stuff, and like every 7 years you go through stuff in your life. Like there's those spiritual concepts of where you go through these growth patterns every 7 years, and it's supposed to be something in lines with like the chakras, and you go through your first 7 years of life, and that's where you're developing the energy that would be in your root and everything else. So it's just coincidental that it's been 7 years since then. That was like one of my biggest growth years. This year coming up this year, I feel like is going to be massive for this podcast. Like it started out really huge. We were like topping some charts in January around the world. So I was like, whatever, since the eclipse is happening this year and it's on that 7-year growth pattern, like I want to be in the middle of that shadow when it comes by. So
yeah, I love it.
I love that.
That's great.
I was trying to do the math in my head for like my 7 years, like the last year that like was just so tumultuous and crazy. And I'm like, oh, I have a few more years. I need a break, man.
Yeah. You got to have that. You got to have that break. It's actually part of what I just spoke about in the last episode, that you have to go through. Like the whole process of that we go through is like iron and melding iron and fire and straightening it out. The episode was, I think, called Stand Straight. Geez, I can't remember the name of the own episode that I did. It's basically straight. I have to get it right now. It has been a long day, but it's pretty sad that I can't remember an episode. The Stand Straight, Not Held Straight. And it's a quote by Marcus Aurelius. And it basically is meaning, you need to be able to hold yourself straight, not have to straighten yourself out every day. But we have to eventually get to that point in our lives. And I spoke a lot about how that whole process is kind of like what iron does when it's getting straightened into like a blade or a sword. Like you have to get hammered, you have to get heated up first, then you get hammered. But the important part of it is you have to quench that hot iron in water. And that's what strengthens it. So that part of what you're talking about, like I need a break. Like that quenching part of your life is what will help harden you and straighten things out so that you can go through the fire again and get reshaped. And it's all part of a spiritual process, which is kind of the theme of what we're talking about today.
Topic.
Yeah, embrace it, Alexis.
That's right.
I'm tired. Tired.
But these experiences that we all go through, like, when you go through some of the shit, like those things help you have a better perspective on life. You end up a little bit more weathered. You feel like you can handle things a little bit more. When the hard stuff comes up, you're able to handle it a little bit better than you were the time before. And you're definitely in a place that's a little bit more hardened than the person who's never been through anything hard, which is where this concept of spiritual snobbery, I think, comes into place, because you can get to a place where you feel like you can be a leader, maybe, and you can teach people, like, you can make it through what you're going through and you can survive this stuff. And even though it's hard, it's one of the best things that's going to happen in your life. Or you can go to the other side and let it grow this like massive ego that, well, I've been through this shit and you need to listen to me. And if you want to make it through what you're making it through, you got to take my advice. And I've seen it go both ways. Like I've seen a lot of people throughout these past 7 or 8 years that go from the far end of the spectrum. And I feel like you, Alexis, Jami, I don't know you too well, but Alexis, I feel like you're one of those kinds of people where it's like you've been through this stuff and you want to like heal and teach rather than be the preacher up on the podium, like telling everybody to follow your ways.
So that's interesting that you say that, because when I first started going through the spiritual journey, I was learning from everybody. And then I got to a point where I was like, oh, well, I know the way. And I know the right way. So I've been to the far deep end of complete spiritual snobbery where I'm like, I'm the master. I know what I'm talking about. But then now, I love being there so I can understand being in that state of mind. But now I'm at a place where, like, just a minute ago, I was like, I'm tired. Like, now I'm at the far other side where I'm just like, I feel like I've grown so much and become so self-aware that almost now that I'm looking to the future and I'm like, what's going to happen next? Like, I'm ready for it, but like, what's going to happen? Whereas in the past, I was like, nothing's going to happen to me. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was almost like a naive standpoint where you weren't too sure of yourself and what your capabilities actually were, like where life was going to take you almost didn't really matter. And now once you've gone through and seen the value of the tough times, when you go through some of that stuff, life starts to have a lot more meaning. Like even the hard stuff stops being so hard and it's just sort of expected. And you're always kind of curious what's going to come out of the other side of it.
Yeah. See, thank you. Exactly.
I can typically get what you're trying to make for a point. Although
every time
when you go on a tangent about taking someone out to the woods and putting them in a cabin, getting them drunk, and somehow that relates back to the spring equinox, I have no idea how the hell to rescue on that one.
We can reel her in.
We can reel her in.
I think I was really interested in talking about this with you because as soon as Alexis told me like spiritual snobbery, and I'm like, well, I don't really have I've got a little bit of experience with the spiritual world, I guess, but for me, I just can see that on so many different levels. I mean, it's with anything. It's like I started in birth, and the more I learned about birth, and the more I was like, oh, this is the way. This is how I can teach people as a doula, as a guide. Like I know how to teach them have the best birth. And then as I've grown and learned, it's like, no, the point is letting them valuing what they have and being able to bring out what is good in them and what they value. And that is what is going to empower them. And like, I feel like that is across the board. So like that is with spirituality, and that is with religion, and that is with all these other isms and these identities that we latch onto. But once we get to this point where we're like, oh, I know the way, that's when the ego comes in. And then you're not seeing the people that you're trying to, in the beginning, like help. And so I don't know, that's why I was excited to come talk to you and see what comes of it.
Yeah. So I guess my motivation behind wanting to talk about this one today, it's something that I got a little whiteboard. I got whiteboards all over this place on the other side of the cameras, but I've had this one on there for a while just because I remember when I was first starting out on the journey of wanting to leave my previous career path and wanting to sort of find more purpose in life, I turned toward religion, and organized religion was never really a big thing in my family. And Christianity, of course, like there was dabblings in it. We go on Easter and Christmas and stuff, and nothing consistent. So like naturally you hear people that like they're born again Christians, and you can see people who they go through that and they just appear like they're so much happier, and they find this community within the church, and it just seems like on the surface just they were in this awful place, now they're in this great place. So I started there, and it didn't make much sense to me. There was a lot of holes that were within that religion. There was a lot of stuff I resonated with, and I felt like there was a lot of truths, but I also discovered along the way about how the Council of Nicaea modified the Bible, and the King James era, like how the Bible was modified again there. And there was just so much modification that I was like, okay, this isn't the place for me. Like I need to find more. So diving in deeper, got into just different aspects of spirituality, like the book Power of Now that we read on the first season of the show. That was just a monumental book for me. And then as I dove even deeper, I got into these new age people and some of these podcasts, and came across certain people who looked at some of the stuff that I was finding value in and were calling it bullshit. This one particular guy said the power of now is bullshit. He actually had a chapter in a book that he wrote saying the power of now is bullshit. And it's like, hold on a second. What? I've never called the Bible bullshit. Like there may have been modifications, there may have been whatever, but I can't say it's bullshit. And it brings a lot of joy to some people's lives. Like their lives very much revolve around it. Like how insulting is that to call something that someone finds so valuable in their spiritual journey bullshit? So you're saying to be some sort of spiritual leader, but I feel like it's that ego that like, you got to find a reason to be the center of attention by saying something so controversial like that. And I feel like a lot of them do that, whether they're pastors or whatever. Like, what's your experience, Jami? Because I know Alexis said you've had experience within organized religion. Like, have you noticed that those people who are in that role to teach, that they also do a bit of that grandstanding?
Yeah, I guess my experience is similar to yours. I guess just little bits here and there, and I've latched onto things because of what I got out of it in the community, or like the good parts of religion, and then just being able to like give something to the divine. But I do, as soon as somebody gets to be like, this is the way, these like absolute truths, and capital T, capital anything, it's just, that is when I'm like, ooh, ick, like get out of here, because there are so many other things that are valuable and valid. And I guess that's, for me, it's just always this red flag in anything that I come across. And it starts with religion too, for me, because I'm like, there's no one path for me, like, from what I've like experienced. And I think that's when like evil comes out. Like, not to sound like crazy, but that's when people start to get like mean and cruel and evil, is when they think in these absolutes. And that's so, I guess, like fervent in these types of groups, and starting with
the religious dogma. The religious dogmas really get people polarized.
Yeah. And leaders too, right? Like it just standing up there and speaking in a way that is captivating. And I was saying this to Alexis too, because she showed me a blog that one of these spiritual leaders potentially that are out there, or like somebody who was talking about being a spiritual leader. I'm not exactly sure what they were like trying to say, but as I was reading it, I was like, man, this person is just using all this really unattainable language. Like they're elevating themselves, and and if anybody else can't like grasp what they're saying, then that person is lesser. That's how it feels. It's like, oh, they're speaking in all these colloquialisms and they sound so wonderful, and like, I know the way. And then it's like, wow, they must be great. They must know what they're doing. And I think I just see that in religion and in these with these gurus. And it's like, if you really wanted what you're saying you want, then you would speak to the people, not above them. Anyway, that was a tangent.
I love that.
That's what this is all about. Like, you gotta go on tangents. Like I've seen so many spiritual leaders come along the way who basically want more followers than they want to have people find what they're
Right.
actually supposed to
What
be there
they're
for.
actually speaking about. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
And I
That
guess
that's mind-blowing to me. Like,
Yeah.
I don't understand that, because when I was talking about earlier about how I've been in that space, it was because I truly wanted to help people, and I'm like, I have this thing. Like, I know how to help you. It was never like I want more followers, I want more fame, I want more this. So when you guys talk about like these leaders just wanting fall, it's just mind-blowing to me. Like, I just can't even wrap my head around it.
yeah.
It feels like a mix to me. It's like those groups require that there's people who are only thinking in that way. Like, I have the key, I know the kingdom, I want you to have this.
The keys to the kingdom.
Yeah, the keys to the kingdom. So that it requires that you have those people. And then also in the mix, there's these people that are really just like, well, we have to gain our numbers. Like, there's money in this, and I still have to make a living, and people will flock to this. I mean, there's always a mix of it. You need the people that fully believe it and are doing it for the right reasons. And also there's, I don't know. Does that make sense? What can you do with that?
Yeah, like people are weird. Like, human beings are super weird because they have this need to be led. And that's something that I've heard a lot of philosophies talk about on podcasts and stuff as of lately, because a lot of political structures are breaking down. A lot of people are turning away from like the British monarchy, and people are starting to realize like the BS that's within politics and not wanting to go left or right. They're wanting to go independent. And I feel like a lot of what we're talking about today is almost religious independence. And that's why I've become, I basically throughout this entire spiritual journey, I've looked at bits and pieces of all these different religions and really resonated with certain parts of it, but not with other parts of it. So I couldn't say like, yeah, Buddhism is bullshit because of the way that it has treated women historically. Like, no, I don't like that portion of it, but there are some aspects to it that like I feel at a soul level. So like, yes, I like that. Yes, I like Taoism. Yes, I like Confucianism. Yes, I like Christianity. Like, so I found that is actually a structure of religion, I guess, if you want to call it. It's more of a philosophy, but you can say philosophy, religion, belief, they're all the same word. What is a philosophy? It's a belief. What is a belief? A religion is a faith. And you go around the circle. But omnism is something that I recently in the last couple of years like really started to resonate with, because it's pretty much what you want it to be. Like, you choose every bit and piece of a religion. It's not the same religious practice or spiritual practice for any one person than it is anyone else. Like, my wife could like Christianity more than she does some of the other portions and resonate with them more. If you had a pie chart, you'd maybe have like a sliver of Buddhism and then Taoism and a few other things in there. And that makes up your omnism pie chart, So like, but it's weird because back to like the people wanting to be led, people don't really want to think for themselves. They want to have somebody standing up on that podium telling them how to be, when to show up, how much to donate so that they're a good person afterwards.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, like
tell me what to do.
Some people just really need that and others don't. And I think it's the people who don't are the ones that tend to have these conversations and break away like we are right now. But there's always those people out there that are identifying those groups. And I've actually seen them. I started the United Association of Omnism because there was no organized portion of practicing omnists, and I haven't been able to do a whole lot with the organization. But ever since I did, people dive into it and they're like, tell me more about this. I want to be an omnist. It's like, you don't need me to tell you how to do it. Like, just start. Like, it's amazing because it's like the point of it is it's like somebody being an independent as far as politics go, but then wanting to know where people stand on certain positions. It's like, well, that's the point. It's like you're supposed to kind of identify it for yourself. And I guess that's the opposite of what organized religion tends to
it's kind of just an act of being, not choosing and being guided. It's like, I'm just here in the now, accepting what feels right and creating on my own. And people get really uncomfortable with just being.
Yeah.
They have to latch on to things.
Surrendering and allowing what's coming into your life. I mean, I feel like that's why I'm kind of, I don't want to say completely that I'm swaying it away from spirituality, because I am very spiritual. Like, I definitely have those practices day to day, but I guess I kind of get the ick with it because I'm not there anymore. Like that's not my path right now. Right now I'm like really into creative, like podcasting and like being creative and whatever comes with that. Whereas in the past I was just 24/7. My mind was all on spirituality, was all on self-development and inner work. And I guess when I'm looking at like a lot of these leaders or whatever, they're saying like you're in the matrix, or because you're not getting therapy, like you're not, enlightened, or and I'm just kind of wondering if maybe the material mastery or the human experience is meant for the material, is what I'm trying to say. Is like, are we focusing too much on the spiritual as spiritual beings when we're really here having a human experience? Should we be focusing more on the mundane and the material? I'm just questioning these things right now. Like, I don't know the answers, but like, that's my experience right now. And I don't know.
And you also said too, that when you've in the past, like given everything to spirituality, it has removed all the power from you. And you really feel like you want to take back your power. And that is something that spirituality does in all the different facets. It takes away your individual power and gives it to something else.
That's a good point, because I was always like, well, the universe provided this for me, or the universe did this for me, or my spirit guide stepped in, or XYZ. Whereas now I'm kind of feeling like, no, I created all of that myself. Like I'm doing everything. I'm the God. I don't want to say the God.
I'm like, okay, Alexis, you're going a little too egotistical here.
I don't know how to say it. Heath.
I know what you're getting at. So I will dissect what Alexis's point is, that I know where she's going with it. No, because I think a lot of people anybody who's been on a similar path to what you're describing has felt similar feelings. Like even if they're in the early portions of it, they can understand what you're talking about, because as soon as you sort of discovered, as soon as you start asking, why am I here? I guess that's kind of why it all starts. You go through either like a major breakdown in life, or things.
Who am I?
Yeah, it's just like, who am I and why am I even here in the first? What the hell is the point of me taking breaths? Like, what was the purpose for me to get put here? And I think people discover spirituality when they start to answer that question for themselves. And then they find all these different rabbit holes, and so many different things explain so many different circumstances in your life. And so it's almost like you're that child that just learned how to walk. Like you're looking at the world from your back, and then you're looking at it from, crawling around to being up on 2 feet and literally being able to run around and open up drawers and get into all sorts of trouble. Like that's sort of when you discover spirituality. But at a certain point, like you're going to get up off that couch later on, and you're not even going to think to yourself how easy it is to walk. So, but to a toddler, it is the funnest damn thing. To a toddler, when they find out how to walk and they let go of that coffee table for the first time, they're like, holy crap, like let me pull on some stuff and get in trouble. And I think that at a certain point, like diving back into spirituality is just kind of like, I get it. I get these concepts. I don't really need to wonder more about it. Like I want to get back to that. All right, I'm here for a purpose. What is that purpose? I want to create some shit. I want to discover stuff. I want to go out and have fun. I want to experience life for what it is. And you sort of stop paying attention to the spirituality of it all.
Oh my God, Heath, like that is spot on. You've put it into words for me. I've been like pondering this. I'm like, how do I put this into words? You just did it. Thank you. And it makes me feel so good, because when I talk about it, it feels really uncomfortable because of where I've been and where I am now. And I'm like, why can't I just blend them both together? So thank you for putting it into words for me.
And what I think is, so now I'm going to try to not speak about this from this all knowledgeable source and get my spiritual snobbery going here. But
do it. Oh, you're so good. Let's look to you for the answer.
Stop and listen to me. Listen to me now.
We'll join your cult.
Let me pass around the collection basket while we're at it here. No, but I think at a certain point though, you start to lean back into it, because I'm not too far away removed from exactly how you say you're feeling, Alexis. So I think you eventually do your thing in life and you exercise your free will, which is, I think, is the fundamental reason why you are put here on this planet. I feel like you're here to exercise free will because, like I've said before, we are all like the nerve cells on the fingertips of God, and we're out here getting energetic experience throughout our entire existence. That's why we're here. So to do that, you have to have free will. Like if everything was a prescribed fate that you were destined to live out based on the stars and your birth chart and everything else, like what's the point? Like if there's already a book written on what you're supposed to do, then what's the point in being here? And like your free will is how you're going out there and experiencing everything that this existence has to show you. And at a certain point, you're going to exercise all that, but then I think you're going to come back to spirituality. Like I've just recently started to come back into spirituality in a huge way because it's pouring into me. Like I have people keep on coming into me who want to like, hey, I want to understand more about spirituality. I want to understand more about Omnism. Like so many people are doing things. I had the Tao Te Ching. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all, but the Tao Te Ching is just ancient Chinese scripture, and it's fascinating. Just literally get dropped on my lap. Someone's just like, oh, hey, I found this book somewhere. Here, check it out. And I'm like, yeah, I have this, but not this version. And now I'm back in the Tao Te Ching. So it's like something shoving spirituality back down my throat again. But I think you just go on these waves. Like it's a polarity of everything in life. And I think you dive into spirituality and you come back out of it. And I think you will probably end up going in that direction too. There's my scripture. There's my sermon.
I mean, yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, you're probably right. I don't know it. I have no idea. I think I was like so set on, the future and setting goals. And I'm like, this is what I'm going to create. And this is what this is going to look like in 5 years. And now I've just released all of that. And I'm like, we're going to start a podcast. I don't know what, like maybe we'll record 2 episodes and be like, that was fun. I'm bored. What's next?
That's what I said. That's what I said in 2019 was maybe I'll start 2 or 3 episodes. And to start off 2024, we charted #1 in a couple of certain countries. So it's like, you never know where it's going to go. You never know.
What do you think about this?
I think it's great.
That's what I got to say.
Yeah,
No.
I think there's the people who, I guess, I don't know, the people who look down on others who don't have as much experience. Like that's the part that I've had the problem with the most. Like I've just heard so much preachiness about like, well, if you're not on the path or you're not doing this, then you don't understand. And only those who are dedicated to becoming better. And it's all these absolutes, like to be spiritual, you have to do these certain things and you have to act a certain way just because a certain person did it a certain way. And so many other people in that realm of spirituality have done it a certain way. And it's that preachiness, it's that absolutes, like it's that prescribed definition of what a path is supposed to look like. And if your path doesn't look like that, you feel insignificant in a way because you don't feel like you're measuring up to somebody who's got all this great experience, who's got all this education or whatever else. And it's like, I feel like that's the complete opposite. Like, I feel like somebody could disappear into the woods for 10 years and get such a deeper grasp on their connection with God than they would if they were, at a monastery or a convent or anything, and it's like that, I think, is like the absolute definition of where the spiritual snobbery comes from. Like when I picture someone who is that spiritual snob, it's that person right there.
Yeah, there's a couple things like I can think of with these leaders too, or leaders
The gurus.
is that you can
Capital L.
you can go through the spiritual journey and get to a specific point where maybe you do understand a lot more than other people at that point in that specific arena. Like that's not everything,
Right.
but also you could still understand the universe in a different way, but you can still meet people where they're at. But then also on the other side of it is that you also have no idea what these people even know.
Right.
Like for example, Chase, my boyfriend, I didn't realize he knows so much. Like we'll get in conversations and I'll be like, where the fuck did that come from? Like, I didn't realize you were that observant. I didn't realize that you were that, it's just mind blowing, like what people actually know. And so I think that's something that these leaders, I'm going to keep doing that, leaders aren't aware of, is like, people are smart. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So like I've actually seen so many different versions of what this I don't know, do I even want to call it, it's all spiritual snobbery because it's just snobbery in general. But I mean, people become so quote unquote enlightened, you know, like if you don't go and shop at the Whole Foods and you don't shop at the local, you know, the co-op and buy organic stuff that costs 5 times more, then it's like, how awakened are you really? And, you know, like even down to this episode that I just did a couple episodes ago, where I told a story about a listener who kind of read me the riot act because I went after an online troll in a video response on TikTok because the guy was making comments about me wearing eye makeup because I had vitiligo and I had sort of a sunburn going around my eyes during the summer. It happens. I have like this albino skin condition around my eyes, and it was pink because I was out in the sun. And the guy's like, dude, you wear makeup? And I'm like, no, you asshole. Like, I have a bad skin condition that's a end result of a cancer battle that I went through. And I forget that I have it until some dink like you reminds me of it. And I had a listener write into me and say, you are not who I thought you were. What happened to the power of now? What happened to you know, oneness and these books that you read and all this stuff that you preach, you know, and you're out there calling people an asshole? Like, everything you've ever done has been completely wiped out by this one video. And I'm like, you are the epitome of the opposite of what I want a listener of this show to actually sound like, be. So like, please don't listen anymore. Like, I hate to say that to anybody, but if you're looking at me like I'm some sort of a guru, like I'm a major expert on any of this stuff, I'm just a student who likes to teach what I'm learning along the way. I by no means am no expert, which is why I think I've had such a hard time getting the whole omnism thing up and going, because I don't want to be looked at with that starry-eyed optimism from people who are just in this desperate need. Because I'm like, I'm not that person. Like, I can share my experiences and hope that you learn from them, but I'm not going to teach you in these absolutes. Like, your own journey is your own journey. If my mind inspires you, if Alexis inspires you, if Jami inspires you, then let that be that inspiration and find camaraderie through it. But by no means am I your leader. But like I said, people just love to be led. I don't get it.
And, you know, people like, I think there's a shift right now in a lot of people moving from this idea of like arguing to change people's minds or speaking to change people's minds, and as opposed to like speaking and having conversations in order to learn. And that has been a big shift in our country, especially because we come from this like very, I mean, it's capitalism, right? And so it requires that we are like teaching people something and good at something and following instruction. And that really is rooted in like finding one path. And I think with this like spirituality discussion and just where this country is like looking in general, like we have to start having conversations that are really just exploratory. And I don't know, that I've shifted that in my life. Like, oh, I'm not making arguments. Like, I'll give you my experience, but like, I don't need to change your mind. But if you can find something that feels cool or like shifts your perspective and that's it, positive, okay, like that's great. And then we can just exist and like move on and be okay, right?
Yeah. Have you both ever had like that fixed mindset where you're like, this is the way?
That's a good
with
question.
anything, or like even arguing a point?
I don't know.
Don't say no, Heath.
I mean, only with my husband. I'm like, you're wrong.
Those are the only absolutes.
The only absolute.
I'm sure I have along the way. I just don't know about recently, because there's one thing I absolutely hate in this world, and that's being wrong. So, and it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen very often. But
He's an 8.
Okay.
I don't like. I am the poster child. Like, I am like. Alexis has dove down the Enneagram stuff with me, and I haven't really stopped ever since. Now it's like on my algorithm for social media on Instagram. Like, it's totally all over my TikTok and
she's infiltrated.
Yes, like I'm totally down with the Enneagram stuff now. But I don't like being wrong. So like, I've found myself in the last few years, especially even in my political stuff, I'll argue against something that I already believe in a certain way. If I come into a conversation with somebody and they believe the same exact thing as me in a certain thing, I will debate the opposite just because I want to hear why they believe what they believe. Because so many people are literally just parrots. They'll hear something on TV like, it's supposed to be this way. And they're like, it's supposed to be this way. Like, I can't stand people who just repeat something and they've only heard it from one source one time and they've made up their minds on it. And then all they do is go for confirmation bias, and they don't do anything to actually shift their mindset or be open-minded in case new information comes in. Like, the pandemic was a huge part of that. Like, people just got so rooted in certain ways of thinking. They either thought it was bullshit, or they, thought you were a jerk for not doing things that the way the government was telling you to do it. And they just got so polarized. And it was like, at the first, I was drinking the Kool-Aid too. And then as time went on, I'm like, this doesn't seem like it's as bad as it should be. And I got like completely chastised for it. And I think opened my eyes the most, because I just didn't want to be wrong on anything. So I've been completely open-minded about it.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing happens. Like, I've seen how so diehard not just a person is, but generations of a family dynamic will be with religion. Like, it is just the family dynamic, and you don't budge from it. And it's like, when you bring up some of these facts, like, well, tell me what your feelings are about the Council of Nicaea. Oh, well, they only took out the books that were, completely useless and didn't have any value. It's like, did you ever look into those books though? Like, Gospel of St. Thomas is some crazy stuff that was all things that Jesus said, and it basically put the power of God, instead of out there, an vengeful God that was going to smite you to hell if you didn't obey, put the power inside of here, which took you out of the church. And I understand why they took it out, because they wanted you in the church. And like, you have that conversation with certain people, they're so hard rooted into their current beliefs, they can't budge from it. And when I see that happen in other people, I don't like that reflection. So I've just made sure, I'm just like, I want to be as fluid as I possibly can be with any concepts. Convince me of something, even if I already believe it, convince me of the other side, because I just want to prove that the way I believe is right. But I'm presenting an argument to you in the contrary, so that you can convince me of something, and that provides real interesting conversations. Like, it really does. It, instead of just glazing away from certain conversations, because I've noticed that a lot lately too. Like you just said, Jami, like, you don't want to get into debates with people. Like, if you want to believe something, you go ahead and believe it. And most of the time I'll be like, whoa, don't get so worked up. I completely agree with you. I'm just playing devil's advocate. Asshole. Like, and people are like, oh, I hate when you do that. Like, they get so worked up over a certain mindset. But it's like, I want to tease out of you why you feel the way that you do. And I think back to something that you just keyed in on too, Jami, is like, you can't force people, in that Matrix analogy, to take the red pill. Like, that's one thing I've completely discovered over these past few years, is that if there's something you want to present to somebody, you can just present it out there. And it's just like in the movie where he holds the red pill and the blue pill out. Like, you can't grab the person's mouth and you can't shove the pill down their mouth. Like, you can't do that. And no matter how many times you try, people will come even more resistant to that red pill of knowledge that you're trying to drop on them. So it's like, you can try once, and if it falls on deaf ears, you leave it alone. And then if another subject comes up again, you try it again. Like, I think that aspect of it, but it's the snobbery comes in, where it's like, well, you're not worthy of the red pill, and I'm not having these conversations with you anymore.
Right.
Like, I think that's the snobbery that kicks in.
Yeah, I feel that, as opposed to kind of taking this approach where, almost this humble approach, where you're like, oh, I have this conversation with somebody, and maybe there's a piece of it that impacts their life 8 years down the road. Okay, cool. As opposed to taking a conversation and being like, oh yeah, they don't get it. I'm the snob. Yeah, they're not here. They're not with me. But there's so much power in being like, oh, maybe I impacted them now. Maybe I didn't. Maybe there's one single word that matters to their life or to their child down the road. Like, I don't know. It's just like humbling.
Takes a long time for that seed to germinate sometimes. You put that seed in the ground, and takes 6 months sometimes for anything to pop through and start budding into anything. So like you said, years later, it just, who knows, like, the right thing might come across somebody's path and be like, oh, I remember that conversation I had with Jami all those years ago.
But if you have this snobbery approach, you've got this egotistical, like, maniacal, then you're not doing that. Right. You're not looking at it from that perspective.
Yep.
Have you guys ever been influenced or believed in a spiritual snob? That's so funny calling it that. Or maybe not even spiritual, just somebody that you really believed in or you were influenced by, and then years later you're like, what the F?
All the time.
Everybody.
You could tell me anything, I'd be like, yes. Guilty.
I'm trying to think if there were some people who I did really follow along with early on, and then I just I don't know, there's some aspects about it which made me feel in a certain way that I myself was having spiritual snobbery tendencies, which is why I wanted to talk about this subject so much, because I've identified certain paths of thought that have happened. I've looked at people like, man, they're asleep. Wow, they're sheep. Like all these different, very judgmental things from time to time. And I've let a lot of those go. But like I've seen some of these people who I followed and they were very materialistic, which I don't think that's completely wrong. Like I want to dive into that in a minute because Alexis, you and I talked about that, but very, very materialistic, very vain, a lot of vanity, like all of those things that I feel are supposed to be the complete opposite of what the whole true spirituality really are. You're not supposed to want all this materialism. Like that's supposed to be the antithesis of spirituality. You know, you're not supposed to be super vain and want to put your pictures and your selfies and, you know, dress provocatively. Like that's supposed to be the complete opposite of spirituality. So I'd seen some of that and it turned me away, on top of a lot of other things. Like it just kind of turned me away from, are you there to lead and be seen and learn from your experience? Or are you there really to not just be that spiritual person who's up there trying to teach people, but now you're doing it like half naked with all sorts of jewelry hanging from your face in your Maserati and like just like I'm being totally judgmental right now, but it was just sort of like an ickiness of the same thing that you would get from like, you know, maybe a typical pastor or something like that in front of thousands of people in a church, just totally grandstanding and talking about you know, the depths of how people are supposed to be spiritual, all for the sake of taking their money and buying another $1 million home. Like I felt like some of those spiritual leaders were along that same concept. Like, I don't know how you could just snag people's money and build these giant houses and you have all these followers. Like if you're truly there and you're trying to lead people, like I just don't understand how you could live such a materialistic life. But what are your thoughts on the other side of that, Alexis? Because you've talked about how you've also shifted where you don't feel like materialism is like the opposite of spirituality.
Yeah, I've just been thinking a lot about it because that's actually my, besides like the podcast and then continuing the podcast with you, I just keep thinking, I'm like, man, like it sounds so fun and interesting to be able to create based on your intuition. So from moment to moment, following your intuition and creating things that you really love and that you're passionate about. How can I make a lot of money while doing that? Like that sounds interesting to me, like wealth administration or even like dealing with power and wealth administration. Like how can you build wealth? Like what are the ins and the outs? And like how do you do that without being greedy? Like that sounds so cool and interesting to me. But also how is that not another path to spiritual enlightenment?
Right.
Right? Like that is very human to want to create material wealth.
Yeah.
Doesn't that sound fun, guys?
That sounds great.
Like I think exactly what you're describing though leads to sort of that enrichment of life experience too. Like I think everything that you're talking, I think it's all within balance. Again, like that comes back to all of the polarity and balance of everything in the universe. Like everything has to be balanced out. Like I think that you can go for some of that materialism. I think you can want to have that large bank account so you can take those great adventurous vacations with the people that you care about and have those experiences. It's like when I think it goes to the opposite side where you've got 15 Rolls Royces, you've got like 5 different houses, when you've got people who are sleeping under bridges in this world. Like there's just something that's just there's no virtue in that, in my own opinion. And I see I'm torn, because like, is that in and of itself spiritual snobbery? Like,
Yeah, like that feels snobbish to me.
that's what I'm saying. Like,
but I mean, as though
I'm willing to admit it.
Yeah, it's so how do we I don't know that there's an answer to be not that way, because you're essentially saying somebody has to be living virtuously.
Right.
And that's spiritual snobbery.
Right.
I mean, I agree with you, but that doesn't mean that like that's an okay stance to take. I don't know, it's the same thing.
Yeah, to live a virtuous life, it is one of good moral standard, good moral character.
Right.
Like, it's doing the right thing when somebody's not looking. The, definition of integrity.
Right.
So it's like, I don't know, I guess to be so spiritually connected, in the sense that a lot of these people say they are, and to not use massive amounts of wealth that you've built by leading other people down paths of spirituality, and then not going out there and helping your fellow person who might be suffering. Like, I guess that's a lack of virtuosity. Like, you are doing everything for yourself and not having that expansive connectedness. So, and I guess that I'm not saying in that sense that you're not spiritual because you're not doing those things. I feel like it's a far swing of the pendulum in the opposite direction, where you have these people who will literally go and live in a van, and they will spend their time all out in Joshua Tree or in the jungles of Costa Rica, or like whatever, finding God, finding spirituality. Like, you've got that on the minimalist side, and then you have these people on the other side. And I just don't feel like either one is right or wrong. I just feel like there's that middle ground where you can be somewhere healthy in the middle and recognize the whole spectrum of it all. But if you have kids and you're literally not able to, they're begging you like, man, Dad, I would love to have a ride in a car like that, or I would love to go travel to this place or whatever. And it's like, well, it's not very spiritual to want to have money. Like, I feel like that part is way over here. But then you have these mega rich people who claim to be so connected, but don't do anything to really use their massive wealth and power to benefit the people who are hurting the most in this world. Yeah. I could never be a billionaire just because I couldn't hold on to that. Doesn't mean I'm better than anybody else, but I sound totally hypocritical and spiritual snobbery. Like, I completely recognize that, but I'm laying out, like, again, I'm doing that catch-22 devil's advocate arguing here, where I recognize the broad spectrum of it all. And eventually I'll subscribe to likely one point until somebody convinces me to step off that point and say, no, Heath, to be really spiritually connected, you have to have the most money possible. Like, you have to have a swimming pool full of money. And I'll be like, okay, I'll test out your theory, and then I'll let you know how it goes. So
are you like him, Jami? Like, would you rather not be like a billionaire? Because do you think it'd be really difficult for you not to just be spending it all on everybody else? Is that what you were saying? Kind of like,
yeah,
you
like
handing it out like candy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in my life in general, I take the same approach that you are, Heath, that just that there is a purpose to be like virtuous, but that's just our choice,
right?
To believe that that's our purpose. Does that make sense?
It does. Like, that just happens to be the place, and I'm no better than one of these people who is mega rich. Like, I'm no better than them for doing,
unless they're truly hurting people.
Unless they're using their money to actually hurt people. Exactly.
Yeah.
it's all judgment calls. It's just, I don't know. Like, could I sit there with this person and argue that the place that I am in is more virtuous, more connected to other people, because I'm not completely focused on just earning money from the practice that I'm doing? Like, yes, of course, like Alexis said, earning money for doing what I'm doing would be a fantastic thing. If it could be just the sole source of income and live very comfortably on it, is like, that's my dream. Like, that's a dream that I hope is going to come true in the very near future.
It will.
It will. And I'm bringing it in. I'm calling it in. But like, is that any less or more virtuous than somebody who is solely focused on that? Like, I could make the arguments. Like, I could just say that your restriction and contraction is the opposite of the expansion and connection that you get. And I think that the connection that you get to everybody in this world, the more people's hearts you can touch, the more people that are going to experience, like the word love is not so much, get away from the emotion side of what love means. And love is really the connection that you would end up feeling toward people. You can love somebody that you don't have an emotional in love sort of emotion for.
Yeah.
And you have that connection to people. That's an expansive way of looking at life. And I feel like the hoarding of money and secluding yourself in these big rich houses, and you're dividing yourself economically and on your podium from the people that you're supposed to be serving, like that's a constrictive, restrictive type thing. But you can also argue that, well, with my power and money, I'm expanding my reach, and I don't know, like I can't argue one point. I sound like totally hypocritical, like I don't know what I'm trying to argue, but it's because I could argue it across the spectrum. So I don't even know.
Just going in circles here.
Just a lesson in that. Like we can be hypocrites. Like we can have these different views because there's not really, because we don't have a capital T truth, right? And that's beautiful. And
well, you guys are I keep kind of spacing out when you guys are talking, because I haven't thought about like, okay, let's say that I am able to figure it out. I am able to create tons of abundance and wealth based on creativity, which is what I want. What would I do with the money? I have no freaking clue. I have no idea. Like my first thought is probably travel, but like now I'm like, am I not virtuous? But I feel like I love people so much. Like I am so giving, but why do you have to be giving with money? But then also, see, now I'm doing the circles because I'm like, well, you could give a lot and you could help so many people. This sucks. I hate this conversation.
It does.
It's hard. It's hard.
But
what's the right way?
She just wants us to somehow give her permission to just make a lot of money and it to be allowed.
Yeah. And this goes back to like, I need to like get online and find some kind of like spiritual snob and be like, what's right? Tell me what to do.
The thing is that
so maybe we need them.
I would love to have this debate with some of the key people that I am talking about, but I don't honestly think you can have that debate with them because I don't think their egos would allow them. A lot of them have very, very inflated egos. And I don't think many of them would be able to be self-aware enough to actually talk about themselves in the sense that they are in fact a spiritual snob. Like I'm fully admitting that I have certain tendencies of certain trains of thought that would lead down that road. Like I've definitely from time to time have looked at the way that people act. Like I was even talking about diet earlier. I look at people who smoke cigarettes, who do a bunch of things that aren't good for them. Like people who will just do things consistently that they know will poison them. And I've tended to look at them and be like, man, you're lost. Like that's just like you're completely destroying your health. And I have felt myself feeling righteous about it, but there's things that I don't understand within those vices that I've learned to understand a little bit more. But in my past modes of thought, I did not at that time have the sympathy or the understanding to understand where they're coming at regarding those vices. Like that's all part of a spiritual journey. Like even if they die at age 40 because they smoked from the time they were 16, it's like in those final chapters of their life and the regret of the choices that they made, if your purpose is to come here, learn some lessons, pass away, go on the other side and be like, okay, wow, here's what I did. And I'm going to do it a lot differently next time. And when you come back around the next time, if that's how we end up getting rebirthed into existence, you carry some of those lessons with you energetically to build that spiritual being of whatever you are, like past life type things. I don't know, but I think that if you do come and go at a young age, and that happens to be what your karma, your life's path, whatever it was, I think you carry that forward with you. So I can look at it critically and be like, why are you poisoning yourself? And it's like, well, this is the place that they were put in this particular journey. Like, in Alexis's story, like part of her previous life may have been one where she had a phenomenal parental child relationship with parents. Like same with me, like maybe in another life, things were completely different. So on the other side, it was like, well, okay, this next time around, I got to have the complete opposite experience. So I know what it actually feels like. Like maybe that's how it goes around. I don't know. So I can look at it from that snob of why are you poisoning yourself to this is part of their karma. They get to learn whatever lesson this is and carry it forward with them in this experience.
Dude, that's what I'm saying. Like in the past, I would look to people sometimes and be like, we've talked about like, I'm handing you the keys to the kingdom. Like I can help your suffering. I can help you get out of you're entrapment, but now I'm looking at everyone and I'm like, maybe they're just perfectly exactly where they're meant to be. Like maybe like they chose intuitively like where they're at right now. Maybe we shouldn't be going around preaching and trying to fix everybody and just look at their path of like, you're perfect. That's perfection. Keep fucking up and doing whatever you're doing,
But
But that's one
why?
side of it, I don't know.
I mean, why are we, I guess, trying to find it on a constant basis? Like, why are we trying to constantly, I don't know, either escape the life that I guess is like the matrix? Like, why are we constantly trying to break away from that whole, matrix in society when we're literally living the most comfortable lives at any point in, recorded history? We're living the most comfortable versions of life. Like, even some of the poorest people in this world still have iPhones and air conditioning, or have homes that are better than what royalty had 2,000 years ago. Like, we're living a better time now. Why are we always constantly trying to escape that and looking at it so negatively? And why are we, I don't know, I guess, looking down on the experience that we would judge as non-spiritual, when maybe that's the like you said in the beginning of this, maybe that's the reason why we're here. Like, we're here to experience the opposite of spiritual. Like, we come here to experience an earthbound experience. It's earth school.
It's earth school. Yeah, I think about like if I reflect, I'm like, why did I go through that spiritual experience just to land where I am today? And I think it is to break down, like to really become, I guess, self-aware, but also break down old patterns, belief systems, identities, kind of unravel what's happening in the subconscious state, because all of that was keeping me trapped. Whereas now, like, I feel a bit free, like I understand free will, like I see my choices. And that's actually part of the reason that Jami and I started talking or getting, wanting to work together, is because we're like, there are so many choices in front of us. What do we do? Like, and that's really beautiful. Part of the human experience is like, we are free from moment to moment. And I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah.
So
I'm getting tired.
well, I literally looked at the clock and I'm like, I bet you were at about the hour mark, and it's literally an hour and 53 seconds. So
Jami, this is an ongoing joke because of my
clock. It's literally, if Alexis starts a train of thought and loses it, and the episode's been going for a while, that clock is near an hour, and it's literally to the T on the 1 hour mark. So we will wrap up in a minute, but I want to close out with this question then, because I feel like this could be really the part that gives people who may feel insignificant just our own opinions on the solace that you can take out of that experience, where you're going down the path, you're looking at these people, and I guess in certain times, in certain ways, you feel insignificant. Is there any advice that either one of you might have for the people who are looking for that, but then sort of feel insignificant when they follow somebody and they see these posts that they might put on Facebook or something that is just very judgmental because you're so far behind everybody else, and that you don't measure up, and that you're not as spiritual as them? Like, if you feel so self-conscious and you're following these people, what is your advice to those people who may feel insignificant? Like, what might you say to them to help comfort them in their journey based on your experience, and how to sort of move on from having those really sort of nasty sound bites and tastes of these so-called leaders?
I'll just give you the advice I gave my 8-year-old niece this morning. I said, screw them. No, that's not the real advice. But like, you're not less than. Like, everyone has gifts. Everyone has moments that they are supposed to rise above or be like lower than whatever else is above. But that's the like lower parts don't make you any lesser. Like, each piece has a place, and like, as a human, you have a place in this world and in conversation. And I don't know, you're just not friggin' less than. Screw that train of thought.
Yes.
It's like, get rid of it. It does not have a place here.
Yes. How about you, Alexis?
She's tired.
I'm tired. Well, I was trying to think of like a post or something that I can resonate with, and the only ones that I've really seen is with entrepreneurship. Um, I guess it goes back to what Jamie was saying is like there's no need to feel down about yourself. It's just where you're at and being okay where you're at in the present moment. Some of like for me with entrepreneurship, for example, when I was feeling bad about these, because they were technically spiritual snobbery, but with entrepreneurship, I was feeling really bad about myself. I'm like, man, like, how come they're so good at that? Like, why am I not where they're at? And what I realize now is like, I just didn't have the skills. Like you have to acquire skills and you have to acquire tools. The same thing goes with like people, going to therapy or doing spiritual coaching is like, by acquiring these tools and these skills like gets you to where those people are at doesn't mean it, and then you can also in a different lane be farther than they are.
Yeah.
Like we're all in different, like it's just different for everybody, if that makes sense.
It does. I think that when people start judging their abilities to do certain things based on what other people do is where people end up falling short. Like I know when you and I were first starting this podcast and we were doing a lot of things, you're like, oh man, I can't articulate things the way that you do. Like, no, you shouldn't. Like that's that saying of like judging a fish's ability to climb a tree. Like there's different skill sets for different people. And I think if people do exactly what you mentioned before of being much more self-aware to where they are on their journey, they'll realize that they're much more connected than anybody would give them credit for. It's just some of these people in these sort of higher perspectives, if you want to say that they're there, their ego, their standpoint will make you feel less than, so that you turn to them to feel like you could be more than what you're currently feeling like. It's almost like it's their job. It's sort of like an abusive relationship. Like you'd see some narcissistic type people do that in their own romantic relationships, So I don't know. I think it's a unfortunate tendency, but I think as this realm of independent thought and people are out there just kind of hearing podcasts like this and discovering that there's I wouldn't want to call them like predatory leaders, but some of them are. Like there's people who are out there who are just trying to feed off of the desperation of people who feel lost.
Yeah, manipulative and controlling, and having power and ego and making people feel like they're less than is a great way to be able to control people.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think as people are more aware of that, they can weed those out, and those types of people are going to have less and less influence on the world. So spiritual snobs, your time is limited. And if you identify as one of those spiritual snobs, it's not too late for you, just like it's not too late for me, because
you should call this number.
I'm going to put a flashing thing down at the bottom. Don't be like Heath. Don't judge people because they have too much money.
Heath, we were talking about this the other day, like how we're kind of upset that like nobody's tried to recruit us to be in their cult.
You and Jamie had this discussion?
Yeah.
Yeah, like
why aren't we being targeted?
We'd be really good in a cult.
But maybe you wouldn't, because you're not good followers. Like you have too much independent thought. Like you're not going to be good cult members. So
anyway,
do you want to be in a cult? Like,
no, I'm just kidding.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
we're just offended.
I'm sure there's plenty of them out there. You're like, you guys are like living in the desert. I've seen all sorts of weird movies. There's got to be some sort of strange cave dwelling cult people who live out there in the Arizona desert, right?
The Arizona desert. What about out there in the forest near you?
Oh, this is the sticks, man. Like this place is like the Western Kentucky of New England. Like I'm out in the middle of nowhere. Like I don't know about cults, but there's some strange people who live out in the middle of the woods and stuff out here. Like you start hearing banjos play.
You're one of them.
I am one of them. I live at the end of a dirt road with no trespassing signs all over my property. So yeah. Sit out in the back deck just playing a banjo just to make it sound creepy.
With your little shotgun next to you.
All right, on that note, we're getting delirious and talking about cults and banjos and stuff. So,
and that's another topic.
And that's a whole other episode. Yeah, that's a different type of cult, a different type of snobbery.
Yeah.
All All right, ladies, thank you for joining, and best of luck on the podcast. I'm sure we'll have many conversations to help you guys get launched up and stuff. But once the podcast is up and going, we'll probably have you back on so you can promote all the places that it's going to be, because right now it's non-existent, but we'll still put it all over the place, and you guys will have something to talk about the next time you come on.
Well, thanks so much. Yeah, appreciate it.
If you are a conscious thought leader, an expert on inspiration, or have your own amazing story to tell about how you've manifested your best life, we want you on the show. You can connect with us by writing to connect@livethislife.org. That's CONNECT@livethislife.org. Or you can reach out to us through the show's Calendly page at calendly.com/livethislife. And be sure to check out everything going on with the podcast at livethislife.org.